Made some claims earlier this week that I thought Charlotte should ultimately change play callers after the season with offensive coordinator Todd Fitch. So, making claims like that, I know for sure in this business you have to be able to back up what you say. So, I did a deep dive on this team in the past probably couple days, trying to watch back some of the games, looking into the stats. And so, this little clip is basically for stat heads. If you're a Charlotte football sicko, it's probably why you're watching this in general. But I gotta say, if I'm going to make a claim like that, I'm going to have to back it up. So here is my kind of reasoning for those things. So we talked this season. We know the offense has been bad. We know that they've been kind of mangled by injuries. You've been missing quarterback Connor Harrell since the Rice game. That's week 4, going down early in that game, midway through the second quarter. You've been playing with a backup. It's been Grayson Loftus as of late. Zach Wilkie had some spurts in South Florida, played a little bit against Army, got the start in that game, but kind of since then we've seen Loftus play the majority, the lion's share of the snaps, getting the start since that game. So, obviously they're without their guys, missing Jaden McGowan, missing Henry Rutledge, missing Johnny King. A lot of guys on the O-line, we've talked about that. Running back room has been a mess. Don Chaney Jr., who was enrolled, expected to be the lead back before the season, was deemed academically ineligible. So it's been a rough go. And so that's not to say I want to contextualize some of this stuff before I just give you flat out numbers. So you talk points per game. They're at 16.9 points per game, 169 points all season. They played 10 games. They're going to Georgia this weekend. That is the lowest total in the American. The next lowest total points is 201 points. That's Army. So, yeah, like I say, 16.9 points per game. That's very similar to year 1 under Mike Miller with Biff Poggia as head coach of 2023's offense, right around 17.5 points a game. So, very similar. Let's get into it, though. So, when I say something like, hey, I think Charlotte's play calling is bad, I think they either need an OC change or maybe a philosophy change, something's got to happen. Let's just break it down. Points per drive, right? All 10 games this season. This includes the Monmouth game, the FCS game. Points per drive, 1.32 points per drive. So you want to break that down a little bit. I didn't watch every single drive back this season. I've watched them in detail this season, but it's kind of tough. And if you're a fan, you understand. So I went back to, scripted drives. Where is Todd Fitch flexing his muscles? He's got a chance. Obviously, he's working with a backup quarterback. So where are the points coming from? So let's go to scripted drives. So I'm thinking points out of the tunnel, opening drive of the game, and then points out of the tunnel in the second half. So whether they're getting the ball to start the second half, whatever, they've got a script, they've got a plan. Points per opening drive this season in 10 games, 3 points. 3 points. Against Rice, that marks it at 0.3 points per opening drive this season. That's terrible. There's just no way around that. And there have been spots this year. I'll get into some of the improvements here in a minute. There have been spots this year that it's getting better. But still, 3 points with your game script is just flat out ridiculous. And there's a ton of 3 and outs in there. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Points per drive out of the half, okay? Against FBS competition this season, they have 6 total points out of the half. Their only touchdown out of the half was Monmouth, so an FCS game. So points per drive out of the half average all season through 10 games is 1.3 points. So again, what I say is this is your time to make your adjustments. This is your time to call your shots as an OC and try and get something going. And that's just not happening. So like I say, they get a touchdown against Monmouth out of the half. That was a game where they had to come back in, needed every bit to beat FCS competition. They get 3 out of the half against South Florida. They get 3 out of the half against North Texas. So North Texas was the most competitive game. We've talked about that. They get 3 points out of the half. They don't score again. And the stat still sticks in my head. After they kick that field goal, they run 21 plays for 26 yards. 16 of those yards were on the final drive of the game. Bean, can you go somewhere, bro? All right, back to it. 3-and-out rate. This is kind of the biggest deal. It's been killing this team. It's what puts the defense right back out there. The defense hasn't been great either. On offense, so 3-and-out rate, 29% rate, 3-and-out. That's, 3 out of every 10 drives is a 3-and-out for this team. And taking out, the only game where they did not have a 3-and-out was Monmouth. So against FBS competition, the 3-and-out rate's even worse at 32%. So I guess it depends how you want to look at it. Moving a little further, offensive penalties. I didn't dive in too much because there has been a stark improvement there. Early in the season, they're up around 5 and 6 a game. They opened the season with 6 penalties, 8 against Monmouth, 6 against South Florida. Since then, the offensive penalties, specifically pre-snap penalties, false starts, snap and frack, just anything like that that's before the whistle or before the snap has decreased. So they're averaging around 3.6 a game. There have been improvements, though. Since that South Florida game where they had 6 offensive penalties, they had 1 at Army, 3 at Temple, 4 against North Texas, 0, they're only 0 of the season at East Carolina, and then just 1 against UTSA this past week. So it's getting a little better, which is why their third down distance is improving. So their average third down distance is about 7.5 yards. So they're always in third and medium to third and long. This is not where you want to be, especially with a backup quarterback. So again, trying to paint the full picture here, they are working with their season opening backup. So it was brutal to start the season. 8.3 yards per third down against App State, 10.1 yards. I mean, that's 3rd and 10 every time against North Carolina. 9.5 against Rice. Since then, it's dropped off. They've been more successful in early downs, and that's really no thanks to a rushing attack. We saw against Army, they come out of the gates, run the ball. I think it's 6 straight times. They end up with one of their best of the season, 6.2 in that game. It's shocking to see Temple at 5.4, which is their lowest, their shortest third down distance of the season, knowing that they did absolutely nothing in that game and got boat raced. But that's kind of where it's been. It's slightly improved this season, especially from the early non-conference slate. But outside of that, like I say, you've seen marginal improvements. It's not been a big jump. So I want to go from there to chunk plays. And I'm including opponent chunk plays, like what they're allowing. And I know this is an offensive breakdown, but I just want to show you guys where the chunk plays are coming from and how they're having to match it and how their, I guess, inability to do so. So chunk plays, the most they've had all season, Monmouth. So again, FCS. Let's go to FBS. The most they've had, Monmouth was 14, which offensive explosion. They were in this pony personnel. They ran it a lot. We haven't seen it since. That was something that worked really well for this team. EJ Mason as the lead blocker. That was the last time we saw it. So going to FBS competition, chunk play wise, South Florida. They had the most drives of the season against South Florida. It makes total sense. The tempo, they run about 17. I think they had 17 drives off the top of my head. That and North Texas, they both had 10 chunk plays. And that was probably the biggest offensive explosions we've seen. I know they scored 22 points at ECU, and they only scored 20 against North Texas. But ECU, you're just playing from behind the entire game. North Texas, they were able to get a lead, just couldn't sustain it, and we saw that fall apart. So average chunk plays per game, 8.3. The flip side of that, what they're giving up. So what are they having to match, right? How much pressure is this team under? Opponents are averaging almost 13 chunk plays a game. The worst it's been was South Florida with 21, North Texas with 20, Appalachian State with 18. So it's improved slightly. On the defensive side, they only allowed 7 against Army, 10 against ECU, 10 against UTSA. So it's improving a little bit, not a ton. So that's what they're having to deal with on defense and what they're having to match with on offense. So let's get to kind of going into what I just said there, first quarter scoring. So I mentioned earlier, points, opening drive points, they've only got 3 all year, which just blows my mind. Let's hear it. So first quarter scoring this season, they're averaging 2.3 points per first quarter this year, and they have 23 total points in the first quarter. They got 10 against North Texas, 7 against Temple, 3 against Rice, and 3 against App State. And if you remember that App State one, it's off this ridiculous turnover. Jaquarius Conley makes it a great play. Charlotte kind of sustains a drive, and that's probably the high point of the season, at least vibes-wise. You're feeling great in that first quarter. And it was a lot of downhill from there. So, talked about first quarter scoring, talked about points out of the half, points out of the opening drive, 3-and-out rates, penalties, chunk plays. Let's talk red zone, right? So, team sustaining a drive, you get into the red zone, you're feeling pretty good. They're scoring on 67% of their red zone trips, which is pretty bad as far as the American goes. It's one of the bottom 2 teams. But to contextualize that, Out of those 27 red zone trips this season, they've got 13 touchdowns. So less than half the time that they find their way inside the 20, they are capitalizing with touchdowns. So let's look at the other, 14 of those drives, right? They're not scoring a touchdown on 14 of 27. They've got 8 red zone turnovers, which is the most in the American. They're tied with East Carolina with 8 red zone turnovers. A lot of them, and I'll say this, a lot of them are late game. You might as well go for it. You've got nothing to lose situations. So they're not getting into the red zone a lot when it's mattering, but it's kind of stacking up in some of these situations. So, all right. Diving a little bit more. Third down. So I talked about the third down average distance being 7.4 yards, almost 8 yards per drive. They're converting on third down 38.1%, which honestly, when you have such a third down, such a long distance, it's not terrible. It is better than year 1 under Mike Miller, and I believe year 2 as well. I don't have the year 2 right off the top of my head, but Mike Miller, OC under Biff Poggi, was around 24% on third down. But still, for Charlotte, this is kind of middle of the pack. And then the turnovers, and we've talked about that. That's been the biggest deal this season. The running backs can't hold on to the ball. The quarterback likes to throw it to the other team. It's just been rough. Ball security has been an issue. We saw that in just one after another against South Florida. We've seen the fumbles all season. I mean, that started in the opener. It's continued. They're averaging right at 1 fumble and 1 interception a game, throwing the interception. And then when you kind of look at it, okay, like who's scoring the points on offense? It's Javen Nicholas. He leads the team with 32 points, and I'll get into his game in just a second. But the leader in points for this team this season is kicker Liam Boyd with 39 points. So that makes sense, especially with that red zone stat I mentioned earlier. They're kicking a lot of field goals. They're not scoring a lot of touchdowns. And they're definitely not getting explosive touchdowns, but they are surrendering them pretty much at will. So I wanted to contextualize this for myself, covering this team since 2018. The simple rating system, which is something that Sports Reference does for every team, Charlotte's is negative 19.2, which ranks 135 out of 136 FBS teams. So for the Charlotte fans that think they are the worst team in the country, they might not be the worst. And to my surprise, that is still a better rating for the Charlotte 49ers than it was in 2015 and then 2017, which 17 was the last time that they went 1-11, which they are pretty much headed towards knowing they've got 2 nationally ranked teams on the way. So diving in a little more, like I said, when you look at kind of just the ultimate struggles against the FBS, I mean, their game against Monmouth was the most explosive game they've had this season, so it's only going to make their stats worse. But I want to focus on the American Conference because this is where they're supposed to compete. This is where you're supposed to be able to win some games. Right now, they're 0-7 in the American. Likely will finish 0-8 with a trip to Tulane in a couple weeks. So in American Conference play, they have, again, their points per opening drive is the exact same. They scored against Rice. They've got 0.43 points per opening drive this season. So again, to kind of bring it back full circle, I think these are the times when Todd Fitch, the scripted plays to what is going to start a drive, what you feel most comfortable with, what you are catering your game plan to, they are not executing on. We saw against North Texas, they scored 17 in the first half. First drive of that game is a struggle. And it's like, okay, they're settling in so you can see marginal improvements. It irks me, though, watching kind of the offensive scheme. And I said it to Tim Albin, just to take the UTSA game into example, and Tim Albin talked about it after the game. Early in the action, UTSA runs a tush-push. Go Birds, whatever. They pick up the first down. They line up later in the game. And Tim Albin talked about it. He said, I considered calling timeout. I knew that they were going to run something off of it. And we see South Florida run this a lot too. But UTSA runs a fake tush push into a sweep, scores a touchdown on it, blows the game open at that point. We are not seeing that level of creativity from Charlotte's offense. And it's not to say that, again, that I think they have the personnel to get as creative, to get in your bag or whatever you want to say as an OC. And we saw, I remember I worked this North Texas game from home. I was under the weather, but I was excited watching Todd Fitch call plays in the first half of that game. They're running a lot of play action. You're finding the run game. You're running interesting things to get Javen Nicholas the ball out of the backfield. I think that's probably the best way. And when I said this to Tim Albin, like, we haven't seen a lot of creativity on this front, he talked about Javen Nicholas, and I agree with him. I'll give him that. They have used Javen. Javen's probably the best and most consistent player on this team, most versatile player. If you give him the ball in a jet sweep, you hand him the ball as a tailback, you let him run wildcat, whatever it is, I think he can create explosive plays. I think he's probably the best alternative you got. It's going to be impossible for them to overcome a 30+% 3-and-out rate, right? If you're going out there 3 plays, 3 out of every 10 drives, you're not going to score a lot of points. Your defense is going to get gashed. You're going to wear down, and you're going to see a lot of the struggles. First quarter scoring has been a huge issue. We've talked about that. I mean, 10 points against North Texas was the most that they've scored all season. 17 was the most that they've scored in the first half all season, and they would go on to score 20 points in that game. So, like I say, when you look at where this team is, it's very clear that the personnel doesn't match what they want to do. Obviously, when you are missing your starting quarterback for 2/3 of the season, it's going to struggle. And even with Connor Harrell, I didn't feel like that they were utilizing him correctly. Like, that's a dual threat quarterback. We brought this up. Like, Tim Albin said, using him as dual threat was like a bonus. That's his game. Use him as such. And we finally saw, and again, I'll try and give Todd Fitch some credit. We finally saw them using him as a dual threat quarterback. It's a 3rd and 18 against Rice. I think it's 9 minutes to play in the second quarter, maybe just under 10 minutes. They get a 19-yard run, and Connor Harrell injures his knee and is out for the season. So I'll give him some credit there. They did start to figure out that he can run the ball, and that's his game. He's not necessarily a pocket passer. But it's been interesting to see the offensive production after him. And it's slightly improved in some areas. Like I said, the 3-and-out rate got better. The penalties got better. The third down distance got shorter. The chunk plays were about the same. And the red zone success was still pretty rough. Last thing I've got to say, there is still hope for this team, and it's not for this season. It's for next season moving forward. I can't sit here and tell you guys, hey, I know exactly what it's going to look like. I know X, Y, and Z, because this team's going to turn over a ton. I mean, Jeremy and I just talked about it yesterday. The transfer portal window is going to be a madhouse for this team. I don't know if the quarterback for next year is on this roster. If they want to compete and be a very serious team, I think that they should go out and hunt for one. I think that Connor Harrell showed some flashes. Coming off an injury, it'll be a big prove-it season for him, if he even stays, right? That's the reality of today's football, is he puts some decent stuff on film. He may have an opportunity to go play somewhere else. So that's college football as a whole. They're going to have to build the offensive line. Tim Albin did talk about that, and I'm going to plug his audio now about some of the offensive line struggles and the quarterback not having time, which we have seen at times, and then I feel like they played all right at times. So here's what Tim had to say.
Coach, you talk a little bit about like their creativity, setting up plays, building off that. We haven't seen a lot of that from your offense this year. Is there anything you would like to see different in that play calling, that, I guess, creativity side of things in these last 2 games?
Well, to be honest with you, Hunter, I think there has been some things down offensively that have built off. I mean, we have moved Javen Nichols around quite a bit. Backfield, off the backfield, fly sweeping. And he's a decoy. So I'm going to call you on that comment. But to your point, some of those things, those wrinkles that I'm talking about, but we don't hit them. And if we're 2nd and 10, or for whatever reason, so if you don't have a lot to show, you don't really see them. But from a coaching standpoint, the creativity stuff's there. We're so limited, in the run game. And so we're having to, these last 2 weeks, we're trying to move the ball with throwing the ball. And we're just not built for that right now. And Deshaun and Javen and EJ, Derek Easley, there's some things there as far as to throw it. But you're just, we struggle up front. And quarterback wise, it's not always fault. He doesn't have a whole lot of time. So we're going to have to continue to, coach him and see if we can't get the ball out quicker.
All right, last thing before I wrap this up. This went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but this is all an offensive focus, right? And you can look at this and say, okay, you're scoring less than 17 a game, it's going to be a struggle. But there's really no way around it when you're giving up 30 plus a game, and that's the reality. So maybe I'll dive in on the defense probably after the season and see what's going on there. But watching the offense against UTSA, I mean, I went into the press conference and I literally asked, like, what was the game plan? Because I don't understand it. And I know you can't run the ball. That's been well documented this season. And when you can run the ball, they can't hold on to it. I just want to see some sort of creativity, right? And we've watched some bad offenses over the last 3 years. Like Deshaun Purdy was kind of like the flex seal, like boom, terrible offense. Put Deshaun Purdy and Omega Blake go long last year, and that's how you get to 5 wins. I mean, all I can think about is that Rice game last year where they're, I think, down 10-0 at the half. You plug Purdy in, you're up 14-10, like right off the jump. They end up winning that game, and that kind of saved the season. And still a lost season at 5-7 with a fired head coach, but they don't have that luxury this year. They're going to have to find someone that can create that momentum. So we'll see what happens in the portal. They're going to run into a buzzsaw with Georgia. I talked about that. Go listen to that. Go read my story in the Observer. Some of the details of that game are pretty cool, and it's nice knowing how all this comes together. As always, appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I say, this went longer than I wanted, so please, if you enjoy this type of content, want to know some of, the deeper dive on things like this, I'll continue to do it. I tried to get access to the All-22 film. They told me no. The only game I was able to access was the North Carolina, and that was not through the school. So I can't dive in and break down play for play what's going wrong. I will tell you, if you watch the film in that North Carolina game, it's mind-numbing, and I try to highlight some of the good, but there was not too much to. So as always, like I say, appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back more. It's season's wrapping up here. It's almost Thanksgiving. So for all the listeners, happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks for following along. Be back.